What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. I thought we were going to have some technical difficulties there. I saw I was still muted, but I'm not. So, you know what we had to do? We have to hop in here today. We're doing a 12-team Superflex, tight end premium, all that good stuff. I don't need to go through it. You guys know the format that we like to play over here. But we're doing a startup mock draft, and it's not just me today. We have a special guest, first time to the channel. It is the King of New York. It is not Lil Mabu. I promise it's not Lil Mabu, but it is BDGE's finest. Let's get him into the building. Nicholas, how are you?
I'm wonderful. To even be put on the same platform as Mabu is you just made my day, maybe my week.
Hey, we said it's the King of New York, man, so we had to do it for him. But look, man, we got a bunch of people in here hungry, ready to draft. They said somebody's in here saying that we need to hurry up because he has to use the restroom. I don't know why he can't draft while he's on the toilet, but it is what it is.
Yeah, they got cell phones for that. You know, you can use that while you're on the toilet. You can watch while you're on the toilet.
It's like a mobile device. You can like go anywhere you want with it. But I say let's hop right in here. Let's hit this draft and we'll get it rolling. Nick, I got to ask you, do you have any set strategy that you're going in with today, or do you like to just like wing it?
No, so I feel like a lot of the times in startup drafts, I almost let my first pick or two kind of dictate the strategy that I'm going to take. I don't typically go into a draft with a super set way that I feel like I want to go, unless I'm super intentional about it, which I normally am not. So I think I think I'm going to go a little spicy here and take Stroud at 3. So that was more a little bit less like I wanted Stroud at 3 and a little more like I'm gonna start my direction with a nice young quarterback to be like the staple of my team for the foreseeable future.
Okay, makes sense. I think for me, man, I usually, at least what I've been doing this off season when I've been going through some of these mock drafts, the strategy that I feel like I like my team the most when I use it is that hero running back where you take a really for me, it's been Jonathan Taylor because his value seems so depreciated in startups. But being able to get like Jonathan Taylor and then punt the running back late and get that RB2, that RB3 later in the draft, that's what I've liked. But I'm going to try something different today. I haven't done enough of them this offseason, but I'm going to go that 0 running back build. So we are going to push that off a little bit for me, which means I am going to be looking for some value at the quarterback, the wide receiver position, maybe even an elite tight end. We'll see, but we'll just see what the board brings to me.
Yeah, I actually kind of agree with that strategy because Jonathan Taylor kind of fits that to a T. He's like the type of guy I'm looking for where I feel like he's just as good and just as valuable as the dudes going ahead of him that you can get around later. You're kind of in a tough spot here where taking JT at 10 is obviously out of the question, but you'd have to take him probably at 203. I think it'd be a little bit spicy to try to wait for him at 310 where that's a strategy I would look towards, I think, because he'll probably fall to me at the 210 if I want to risk it to 3-3. I like the hero running back. I'm definitely closer to going hero running back or 0 running back than actually starting to pound the running back position in Dynasty. So I might straight up just jack your strategy here.
Yeah, I mean, I think where you're picking at, that's where I picked at in our last one that we did on this channel, and I loved that team. That team turned out great. So I think it's a good strategy from where you're picking. I wanted to go a little bit further back, and it put me in a weird position with quarterback. I didn't really want to go A-Rich or Caleb Williams when I had Jamar Chase staring me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
So I went Jamar Chase. I think I'm going to follow it up here, though. I will take Trevor Lawrence. I think his value's a little bit depreciated right now, but this is still a guy who I drafted him off the board, 6, 7, 8, 9, QB 10. Like, it feels almost like I'm drafting him here at his floor.
Yeah, and it's crazy because we just filmed that video a few days ago where we were talking about T-Law. His Dynasty startup ADP right now is into the 3rd round. It's like the 3-3, which I question that because like I don't really fault you for taking him at the 2-3. And I don't imagine you're actually going to see too many drafts where he falls much lower than that. It's kind of like an off-brand version of what I just did. It's like, hey, let me just get my young quarterback who we know is set up for another contract there in Jacksonville. At worst, if not in Jacksonville, we got all the hangings popping up there. There we go, baby.
They're floating in, man.
Yeah. If he's not in Jacksonville, which he fucking will be, there's no way they just let him walk. It'll be somewhere else and he'll have a nice long career. Maybe he doesn't live up to the T-Law ceiling that we thought he might at one point in his career, but you're still locked into a really solid QB in the most valuable position in a super flex league. So I'm not tripping about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I looked at like the quarterbacks after him, and it's Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields. Like, this is the group of guys.
Yeah.
And to sit there and really say that, like, I could hear arguments for Love, I could hear arguments for Murray, but at the end of the day, they all feel like the same type of quarterback. And just pick your poison. It really doesn't matter in that range, I think, for me. And to think that Trevor Lawrence has almost been punished and put way behind those guys for not being Peyton Manning at this point, it just feels ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that the NFL media, players, coaches work. You know, we also talked about this in our pod where everything needs to happen quicker and faster than it ever has, or else everybody's so disappointed. And it really comes back to like, does that end up mattering? Does all the social pressure start to put pressure on the owners? And I really, really wonder whether or not that becomes a theme of the next few years. And we're back up on the clock here, baby. I took Malik Neighbors. I love that man. I'm actually gonna go Tua here as my QB2. I'm not like overly obsessed with Tua right now, just as a player, but he's another one where I feel like they're on the precipice of locking him up for a long-term contract.
I agree.
And I mean, they got Tyreek, they got Jalen Waddle, they have one of the best offensive systems we've seen in the last half decade. They've got it all going on there in Miami. So you're talking about a team that had what, like 20, actually more than like almost 30 rushing touchdowns last year. Tua, I think, led the league in passing yards, if not top three. You start to sprinkle over some of those rushing touchdowns over to Tua, and he's like sneaky, no matter how much people dislike him, one of the top fantasy quarterbacks in the game, and probably will be around that same floor for quite a while just because he's locked up in such a good system.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And he was number one in passing yardage. So it
Okay.
does go to where they just throwing the football a lot, and there's going to be a lot of touchdowns to go around. And like you said, if some of those rushing touchdowns end up being passing touchdowns this year, he could have a lot better of a season. So I definitely don't hate that pick for you. And I feel like, and you tell me what you think, it feels like the quarterback position specifically this year, like if you're not drafting two quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds, you're almost getting left out completely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the rookies kind of start to take shape because I do actually kind of like that there's a tier where you hit Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, JJ McCarthy, Will Levis, Stafford, like that group where I think all those dudes could have another like really solid 2, 3, 4 if they're rookies and they hit their window. Um, little pocket there. So it really depends on your risk tolerance. If I wanted to fade Tua there and go with a young wide receiver or Jonathan Taylor, and then say like, hey, I'm gonna play a little bit more risky with my wide receiver 2 slot, or quarterback 2 slot, I should say, and roll it on like Will Levis. I think that's a viable path. I don't want to be stuck with these like this middle tier of, I mean, Justin Fields' ADP is still way too high right now, but I don't know that I want to be stuck in the middle tier of drafting a Jared Goff or Deshaun Watson in like the 4th or 5th round. I'd rather try to get a Baker or a Levis or a McCarthy down in like the 6th or 7th.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And honestly, for this pick where I was sitting at there, the 310, I was deciding between Brock Purdy or Jalen Waddle, and I was hoping that Brock Purdy would come back around. AD had some different plans for me, but
Yeah.
I was trying to debate really the thought. You bring up Kirk Cousins and some of these other guys, like the difference I think in fantasy points per game between a Kirk Cousins and a Brock Purdy is probably not very significant. The only difference is you're paying up for that age, right? Like Brock Purdy's younger, he's still on a rookie contract. That's kind of the price that you're paying. And you're also paying for what we know is a guaranteed San Francisco 49ers offense that's going to be really good for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, the only problem is no one like really believes that Purdy's going to be the long-term answer. Like, I'm not really sure what he's going to have to do to prove it. Like, maybe he needed to win the Super Bowl, but I think there will always be that little like twinge of doubt in your mind that says like, all right, if he goes on a bad 3-game streak, it might be his time. If he goes on a bad 4-game streak, it might be his time. If you know what I mean? Like, it always feels like there's that little peak of value that makes me so much less confident in a Brock Purdy than like a Tua. Like, I might think that Brock Purdy actually might be better as an NFL quarterback than Tua. I might think that he's more capable of leading a team to the Super Bowl, which he just did, over Tua. I don't know that relays into like the way that I feel about him in Dynasty though.
Fair enough. I see we got Brett in here. He says, got my car on self-drive, auto-drive Tesla just to tune into the League FFB. So
That's a flex if I've ever seen one.
that's you got to relax, bro. We don't got to have you in a car accident because you're watching this channel.
Facts. Oh,
But
here we go.
let's see, man. Slim says Purdy over Tua. You hearing that or no?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the argument I was just making against that, where I feel way more secure about Tua over the next 4 years, 5 years because of the contract he's probably about to get, as opposed to hoping that. Here's the thing with Tua. Listen, like we went through it this year. He just took the Niners to the Super Bowl, and there was a large 1 month period where he had a bad streak of 3 games, and the whole world was like, "I knew it, I knew it, brother, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it." Purdy shouldn't be the quarterback. Get the next guy up. It's Sam Darnold time. That's going to happen every single year. And whether or
Yep.
not it actually plays itself out, I don't know. I can't really speak to it. But like Purdy, I just don't know when he gets locked down to the point that that we can really feel great about him as a dynasty QB.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it just feels like even when I look at Tua and Brock Purdy, it feels like when their contracts are up, does it almost feel like to you that Tua would get more money than Brock Purdy at this point? Like it's baked into that draft cost that they used. It's baked into some of the other variables. Like that just feels like the way that the NFL will go. And I have to think that Tua Tagovailoa, when it's time for him to get this contract, which is going to be very soon,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably going to be more, don't you think, than what Kirk Cousins got in Atlanta this year, which was 4-year, 180?
Yeah. Oh, Reiki, baby. He stole Saquon from me. I wanted Saquon there bad, and I'm not really keen on taking any of these other running back whatsoever right now. So I guess we'll keep chugging down the wide receiver path. Give me a second to sharpen up here. Tank. Oh, you know what? You know what? Should I just go full fuck it mode and
Talk
go
to him.
straight Houston? I didn't even realize I stacked Stroud with Collins, but now I'm tripling down on the Stroud,
Crazy.
Collins, Dell, and I'm gonna hope that we have the best receiving quarterback trio in the NFL for the next half a decade.
Okay,
Um,
so that brings up a good question now. I feel like a
mhm.
lot of people are going to have the question, and actually, it just popped up in the chat as I was going to ask it. How are we feeling about this wide receiver room with Stephon Diggs now being there? You have Collins, you have Dell. Do you feel like those are the two to have over Stephon Diggs at this point?
Yes. I don't know that would take Dell over Diggs in redraft. I almost certainly wouldn't for this year because Dell's obviously coming back from the injury, and I just think that Diggs being so seasoned, they're going to use him as much as they can for the next year or so. Overall, though, we talked about it on the podcast that we filmed together a couple days ago.
Yep.
We're all in agreement that like Nico Collins right now feels like one of the better buys or value dips in all of fantasy right now because Diggs comes over, but the truth of the matter is Diggs has lost some spark. He's lost a little bit of steam. He's not the downfield separator that he used to be. And he'll be a great possession receiver for sure. But Collins has graded out year in and year out as one of the better separators in the NFL right now. And that to me feels like the stickiest of stats, the stickiest of success for wide receivers. And we just saw him break the fuck out. And if we're talking about Diggs not really having the steam downfield anymore, the guy who does connect downfield with one of the most accurate passers in the NFL right now is Nico Collins. So I don't think those types of targets are going anywhere. I don't think this offense's scoring opportunities are going anywhere. Like he should be penciled into a floor of 1,110 touchdowns over the rest of his contract and soon to get an extension as well. So feel great about Collins right now. I'm not overly concerned about Diggs coming there and taking a bunch of targets because I think Collins has the most valuable targets in what's soon to be one of the most valuable offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, just tagging on to what you're saying is the public reaction almost immediately, at least what I saw on his KTC value, on internet reactions to people on Twitter, all this stuff like that. Like it almost felt like everybody immediately put the nail in the coffin for Nico Collins. And it's like nobody took the time to sit there and digest, like, okay, what is this actually going to look like? What is this actually going to mean for this team? And I think the more that you sit there and look at it, and the more you look at these guys' route trees and how they win at the NFL level, it just goes right back into where you're saying, like, Stephon Diggs, the Matt Harmon reception perception came out. The deep ball has gone.
Yeah.
He's not a downfield winner anymore. He used to be, but as age has gone on, he's just not winning downfield anymore. And that's Nico Collins' bread and butter. There's definitely a big role for Nico. And I think that with the last 3 years of that Diggs contract being voided, and now they're just rolling out as if it's a 1-year deal for Stephon Diggs, it tells me that maybe Tank Dell needs a little bit more time to get healthy, and they want to have a surefire power type of wide receiver in that offense.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think what it is like this the name Stephon Diggs still rings at a very high volume. And he started off last year like on fire out the gate, wide receiver one, maybe first half of the season type thing. And I think most people just attribute the downfall of that second half of the season to like, he's still Stephon Diggs, but like him and Josh Allen were just having problems kind of thing. But I think the numbers are starting to clearly show us, you referenced Matt Harmon's reception perception, that he's not the same player that he used to be. So when we don't have that, like most fantasy players don't really look at that information. They're not looking at RP. They're not looking at these like more defined sources. And I think it's kind of similar to the Purdy Tua argument we were having before. Where it's like Tua's going to have a nice floor for the next, like he's going to age as if he's Kirk Cousins, where maybe he doesn't, like Kirk Cousins had the 4,900 yard season back in Washington. Maybe Tua doesn't continue to get back to 47, 48, 4,900. But I'd imagine like even if this contract in Miami runs out, he'll get like a 3 for 100 elsewhere and just continue churning his career along. Whereas Brock Purdy, are we sold that if Brock Purdy moves elsewhere, if Brock Purdy goes to another team where he's not under Shanahan, where he's not with these weapons, is he going to be able to provide what he did this year? No one is sold on that. No one can say with certainty that that's actually going to happen. So I think there's a little bit more risk with him. And that's the thing with Diggs is like, we haven't seen it elsewhere to know that he's not the same player he was before. But like you and I feel pretty confidently that he's, again, two ships kind of passing in the night. Nico on his way up, Diggs on his way down right now. And I think you kind of take advantage of that.
Yeah. And from an NFL standpoint, great football move for the Texans, like really does truly put them as like Super Bowl contender type of guys. But I saw we had a comment in here from Johnny Detroit, and he says Rice ? With the eyeball emoji. So I took Rashee Rice there at that 5'10". And speaking of guys that feel like they have value dips right now, Rashee Rice seems like a guy who is also seeing a pretty significant value dip. I've seen people downright trading him for third-round picks to get out of him, but I think it's because we've had a lot of mixed information. And you and I almost got at the office this weekend because
not I, baby. We figured it out.
We figured it out, but we almost got. And it seems like Rashee Rice. Are you worried about the long-term outlook of Rice, or do you feel the way that I feel, where it's like maybe a 2, maybe a 4-game suspension, but probably nothing more than that?
Yeah, from what I've learned from being in this game for quite a while, and by the game I mean just like covering fantasy football, is that there are a couple things that we are awful at projecting, and legal situations are one of them. So I never really try to say what I think matters on the opinion, because it doesn't fucking matter whatsoever. What happens will end up happening. We can start to like get a vibe check on what's going on there. Okay, you're going to force me to take Adonai here? No problem. I'm fine with that. As soon as Brian Thomas went, that's when I had to start kind of diving into the rookies here. I was hoping that it went under the radar for another round. But yeah, so I guess like the vibe check that we have right now is that whatever he was carrying, it was just a few grams, is not a big deal legally. I feel like the NFL has almost gone to the other end of the spectrum as it relates to weed-related incidents, where they were so hard on it for such a long time. And now that they've opened the gates up, it's like not really a big deal for them anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm not suspecting anything else. And I mean, if it ends up being something where like the Chiefs organization has to discipline him, he's not going to get fucking disciplined at all. The Chiefs don't give a shit about what their players are really doing off the field. They're like one of the first franchises to open up their arms to players that have off the field issues. They just want the most talent on the field. And if that means Rashee Rice, then I mean, I'm not overly, especially from a dynasty standpoint. You want to have this conversation about redraft and whether or not we should be taking Rice. Cool, another conversation. But like dynasty, I'm not really worried at all.
I agree. I think it's a good, especially at some of the prices I've seen, it's a good buying point for Rashee Rice. But it looks like I'm getting left out in the cold, man. I'm looking at all these QBs coming off the board, and I'm getting shut out on my QB2. So I'm going to have to get creative here. I'm probably going to have to reach a little bit. So I am going to draft JJ McCarthy as QB2.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel fantastic, but we know that the NFL buzz around him right now is that this is a guy who could fall in the top 5 of an NFL draft. And if he falls there, the draft capital is probably going to give him a leash where he's going to be able to at least give us a couple of years to prove that he is an NFL quarterback. We've seen some landing spots in recent mock drafts that we've done on your channel, on our channel, on my channel, like all the stuff that we've been doing where Minnesota's in the play, Denver's in play. Like there's a whole bunch of other places that could be good situations. My hope would be drafting him on this team that he lands in Minnesota, because we know that that's the best landing spot probably for rookie QBs. But him as QB2, that's it's a little rough, but that's what happened with this team.
Yeah, two's a little rough. You made the right pick though. You're talking about a top 5 QB all the way down at 7'10". Like you'll never get a cheaper spot than that. Like you are looking at Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell that went before him. And in rookie drafts, we've talked about it. Like if McCarthy's a top 5 pick, he's penciled in above those guys in rookie drafts. And I mean, the beautiful thing about Dynasty startup drafts is you can build your team however you want because no one else is building it the same way you are. Where it's like, oh, JJ McCarthy's QB2. It's like you hit the draft button on Stafford or Rodgers right now, and there you go. You actually have your QB2, and McCarthy is now your QB3 in waiting there. So it's like the way you build your Dynasty team is super flexible. So that doesn't need to pencil you in. There you go. Will, I thought about taking Levis on my last pick because I wasn't sure if the quarterbacks were going to get back to me, because this was the tier I was referring to early on where it's like, I don't want to be stuck in that middle of taking Purdy in the 3rd, Jared Goff in the 5th. I'd much rather wait 2 extra rounds and grab McCarthy, Levis, and it kind of played itself out exactly that way, and you stole that shit from me. So
Yeah,
disrespectful.
I mean, we talked about Will Levis the other day too, and I just thought about my team build right here. Like Trevor Lawrence, QB1, the rest of these guys are all young. You got Chase, Waddle, Smith, Rice. Like there's clear direction here with this roster. And so you go JJ McCarthy, you go Will Levis, and one of them has to pan out. Maybe both of them pan out for you, but now I kind of have that luxury of it doesn't have to be both of them. Just one of them has to be my QB2. And whether it's Will Levis or JJ McCarthy, it's an upside swing for both of them. And then even if not, like we're still young enough on this roster that we can keep building for the future and playing for the future. So it's not like I'm trying to win now at this moment anyways.
How do you feel about, like, you and I have both gone no tight ends up to this point? You look at Johnny Detroit, he's pretty much going the opposite of us, where he has gone 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, only 1 wide receiver. How do we feel about that build?
It's unique, and especially in a lineup like this where it is 3 starting wide receivers and 2 flex positions, like that wide receiver position is a little bit more valuable. And he has some firepower with the tight ends. It's a tight end premium, but I feel like you gotta get in on those wide receivers earlier than that.
Yeah, especially what's our starting lineups?
It's
Not that it's like
start
that
10.
deep, but
It's QB, running back, wide receiver, wide receiver, flex, tight end, super flex. So 10 of them.
yeah, when you're starting
Actually,
3 wide
here, I'll throw it
receivers,
up.
yeah, when
There
you
you
could
go.
start up to, I could see it. I'm an idiot. When you could start up to 5 wide receivers, you have to be pounding the depth there because you're going to end up playing some poor fucking souls in those positions, and you're going to watch your depth dwindle quickly. And I think that's a little bit problematic. He's starting to pepper in like the veterans, which I think is not a bad idea because we've talked about this offseason where I do think the best value in dynasty startups are these veteran type receivers, are the Debos at the 6'8", the Mike Evans at 6'10", whatever the case may be. And you pair them with the young running backs whose career is at their peak around, right now, where Breece Hall and Devon Achane are 22, 23, 24. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. If you do this strategy, you can make the case for it saying like, cool, I'm getting all these players at their prime right now.
Yeah. And Bindle says Andrews is basically a wide receiver 1. And honestly, in a tight
Sure.
end premium, yeah, you can get those types of numbers out of him. I see we got ATM in here. What's up, Adam? But
Hank.
look, man, it does feel like you got to get more of them, because I just feel like in a league like this, Debo Samuel, Hollywood Brown, I mean, whoever else is going to be on the board down here, it doesn't feel like they're like needle movers for you at all. Like, I don't feel like those guys. Maybe you might get Debo Samuel to win you a week if he gets a rushing touchdown or a couple receiving touchdowns, but they just don't feel like guys that you can rely on to win you a game.
No, definitely not. Those he in particular is not a guy that I love, but I do like the idea of it though. Like I have some more veteran wide receivers kind of on my hit list as we continue to go down this draft board. This is where I'm going to start sprinkling in a bunch of like either rookies or veterans, either rookies or veterans. I don't know, because you kind of miss out on the 23 to 26-year-olds once you get this far down in the draft. Like all those guys are kind of scooped up by the time we get down here. So I like taking my shots on the wide the rookies in this class that I love. You know, the ones that I'm higher than consensus, because you'll be able to get them here, or the Derrick Henrys, right? If you feel like you have a
Yep.
spot to fill, you might have 1 year of Derrick Henry left, you might have 2 years of Derrick Henry left, but like now is when you kind of go get your guys or go fill your spots. Rather in the middle of the draft, you're like best player available. Let's have some fun. Let's pick the guys that I want. And then once you get down and you know what your team is about, then you kind of start drafting based on the team that you've built up to that point.
Agreed. And then the good thing about those veterans too is that you get to a point where maybe you're getting close to a trade deadline or something in your league, and you then at that point can say, okay, am I a team that is going to be in the running here, or can you sell off a veteran for future draft capital to teams that are going to use them? And that just gives you flexibility down the road too. I think a lot of people feel like when you're drafting the veteran in the startup, it's like locking them on your roster, but it's like you could have them for 8 weeks or 9 weeks before you have to make a decision on whether there's going into year 2 with you.
No, it's a super fair point. And I almost find myself getting trapped into that mindset too. I figure like, oh, we're in a startup draft. I'm drafting Derrick Henry. I have him for 1 year. But at the end of the day, Dynasty is very much a stock market and everything is liquid kind of at all times. Like anyone can get these hands right now. So anyone you draft is always movable.
For sure. All right, man. I see that you haven't went with a tight end yet, right? And I haven't went with the tight end yet. So is this
Oh,
typically your strategy? Are you
ooh.
punting these guys deep?
There we go with the run. Not always, man. I just find myself like every time I'm on the board and I'm like, this feels like I should take like Dalton Kincaid here. There's just another shiny name that I would like to take on the back turn of it. And I am a fan of kind of sprinkling on 3 or 4 tight ends at this spot here, where I'm like, all right, let me put together a Michael Mayer, an Isaiah Likely, Tucker Kraft, and a Noah Fant type build, and just kind of figure it out from there. I don't know if that's ideal. I don't know if that'll always work. It's worked for me up to this point. I also think like the other thing when it comes to tight ends that is a very, very like undervalued way of thinking about them from like a strategy standpoint. No one likes taking tight ends in rookie drafts. Every good tight end that has ever come into the NFL has gone through the rookie draft at one point or another. So there are very, very few tight ends that end up going in the top 20 picks in rookie drafts. If there's a first round tight end in the real NFL draft, he gets picked early in the rookie draft. But outside of that, you usually have your choice. Like I remember taking Trey McBride in my rookie draft in my main dynasty league 2 years ago. I got him at like the 2.8 or the 2.9. I was like, he was the top tight end picked in this class. I'll use the pick on him. Hopefully he develops into something. But you start, I think like, whereas we said the quarterbacks, there's no time that's harder to get them than after the draft. I almost feel like that's the case with rookie drafts and tight ends. Like they are so cheap in those drafts that if you're willing to sit for 1 year, it'll usually blossom into a starting tight end. Like it's not a very high bar to draft a Pat Fryermuth in your rookie draft, right? Because usually you're getting them at the end of the second round, early third round. And they're not really that hard to hit on, in my opinion.
Yep. Honestly, that's where that late second, early third this year is where a lot of people were getting Sam Laporta. Like Sam Laporta was being drafted off the board down there, and I got a lot of shares of Sam Laporta. And even
Exactly.
with like, let's talk about some of the higher end prospects. For example, like last year, Dalton Kincaid, first round tight end. I felt like he was a guy who was going in the back of first, early
Yeah.
second, and even with Brock Bowers this year, where everybody is screaming unicorn at the tight end position, generational type of talent. He's still a guy that he's probably coming off the board like 107, 108, 109 type of range in a lot of these drafts.
Yeah, and if you got back into the second, early third, and you want to go grab Jatavian Sanders, you want to go grab your boy Ben Sinnott, finally learn the name, you want to go grab Cade Stover, whatever, some combination of two of them, I guarantee you one of them is going to end up being like a top 12 tight end within the next couple of years, and you'll probably be okay. So it's another reason why I'm okay fading them here, because they're so easy to get. Not great ones. It's not always easy to get the great ones, but more often than not, it's pretty easy to fill that hole through the rookie draft.
For sure. One of my favorite strategies to do in the offseason is to try and target tight ends that situations are looking like they're getting better. For example, like last year, I targeted a lot of Trey McBride. It seemed like Trey McBride was going to have a better situation. You could have got him pretty cheap in trade rooms. In years past, I targeted guys like Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson got a better situation once Dalton Schultz left. Even guys like this year, Michael Mayer. Like Michael Mayer is still pretty cheap right now, and you can go and get Michael Mayer. And is anybody contesting him for tight end one duties in Las Vegas right now? I don't think so. And there's a real chance that he could be the second leading receiver in this offense, because Jacoby Myers is good, but it's not like he's guaranteed to hold off Michael Mayer if Michael Mayer has a good year.
No, that's exactly the point. Is like you hit on one good tight end draft class, and you have a few of them drafted within the top like 4 rounds. They're all going to end up being involved in their offense. Guys like Michael Mayer, guys like Sam Laporta, like none of these guys were first round picks. Like they are all very gettable in rookie drafts. So you want to go pay up if you're in a tight end premium league, cool. I don't even hate the idea of drafting 2 good tight ends to like capitalize on the position. And they are underrated in terms of like point scoring overall when you have like a Laporta and an Andrews in tight end premium. So I'm okay with that. I'm cool with most strategies, to be honest with you. But the one go shit behave. The one strategy I'm just not really on board with is completely fading wide receivers in these types of dynasty settings.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you see, I got a little circle here, so hopefully it'll let me pick. But I'm trying to get Pat Freiermuth, just a guy we talked about. Same thing. You wait till this point in the draft, throw him in there. Why not? I mean, talk about a guy who also has opportunity right now. They traded Deontay Johnson. So there's a lot of target opportunities for Pat Freiermuth this year. We'll see what he does with them. But we've got to the conclusion of this draft here, Nick. And obviously, if this was a real dynasty startup, we would be going probably another 11 to 15 rounds. Like that's probably what we'd be doing. We don't got time for that today, but I do want to take a little bit of time and just kind of recap each of our teams. So I'll highlight your team here on the board. You kind of want to walk me through who you drafted, what you like, what you don't like, and just kind of give me a recap on how this mock has went for you.
Yeah, there's not much I dislike about my team at the moment. I think had I gone back and had a little bit more time on the clock at the 6'10" spot, I don't know that I like investing into players as old as Mike Evans. Like you're in a dynasty startup draft and you have the ability to draft dudes who are 25 years old and you go ahead and draft a guy who's 30, 31. I feel fine with it because he's going to put up numbers pretty immediately. But outside of him, I like the rest of my picks. This is a typical strategy that I think I would take. So every once in a while, I'll get spicy and take the tight end early, but I am trying my hardest to just absolutely disrupt the quarterback and the wide receiver spots at depth on my rosters. And then I feel like it's pretty fucking easy to find production in the running back room, down with Javonte Williams, down Tajay Spears, Chase Brown. I had Jalen Warren kind of queued up. Those guys who in PPR leagues are going to give me 11 to 12 points when you're only filling 2 lineup spots with them are just not an overly huge concern of mine. Like, sure, it'd be great to have Breece Hall or Jahmyr Gibbs or whatever. But listen, again, like the lifespan of a running back is just not very long in today's day and age. So I'm not using a premium pick that could be a guy that solidifies my team for 5 to 10 years and is way more likely to do that than the running back position. So Stroud, Nico, Tank together. I got to mix in some youth, some veteran stuff like Malik and Adonai Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell are 2 rookies that I'm super happy to have on my team. I saw no rookie running backs went off the board until the very last 4 picks of Braylon Allen and Trey Benson. Jonathan Brooks went 9-7 as well. But those will be some of the most intriguing landing spots to see once the NFL draft takes place, because everybody's so hesitant to pull the trigger on those dudes because we have no fucking idea where they're going to land, what draft capital they're going to have. Whereas the wide receivers right now in startups are going so early because we're just projecting 6 of them to get into the first round, 10 of them to be top 50 picks. So it's a lot more fun looking at them now. I don't know how similar we'll feel when the NFL draft concludes, but I came in, I think I did exactly what I wanted to do. I came away with 3 quarterbacks that I feel super confident starting in my lineup immediately. I came away with a group of 5 wide receivers, 3 of them, 5 of them, whatever. I could start right away. And then I'll scrounge together 20 to 25 points between the running backs. And that's usually my mission on a week to week.
Makes sense. Looking at my team here, I kind of said I wanted to go with a 0 RB, and it got to a point where I feel like we talked about James Cook on a recent episode where we were talking about buying and holding, and it just felt like the value was good on James Cook. So I did go a little bit earlier. I think if I were looking at this team critically, obviously the elephant in the room, and I mentioned it and addressed it as soon as we got to the point, but I got left out in the cold with the QB2. So for me, it was I had to address that issue almost immediately. And maybe that's a strategy that people don't like to do in startups, is maybe you don't try and overcorrect yourself in a startup. But I don't feel like I reached for the guys that I got. Like we talked about with JJ McCarthy and Will Levis, you can put those 2 guys together and hope that you find your QB2 out of those guys. So I was able to kind of load up on this team, have the luxury of being able to correct there in those middle rounds because I was so strong at the wide receiver position with Chase, Waddle, Smith, Rice, and then having some good quarterback, and then having a good quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. The tight end, you just push it off, but like we said, we can fill that. And then I get one of my boys, Lad McConkey, and hopefully this is a guy who finds himself early second round, maybe late first round. I don't know if he'll get into the late first round, but maybe. Crazy things have happened, but I like Lad McConkey. I think he can have success pretty much anywhere he gets drafted. He's that type of wide receiver. So like his draft capital here. And that's really what the team went out. So I'm interested to hear what the comments have to say. If you guys like Nick's team, let us know in the comments. If you guys like my team, let us know in the comments. We kind of went head to head here. Nick, do you have anything for the people before we get on out of here?
No, I was just going to make a few more comments about the board. Like Lad is a dude. Lad's interesting because it almost feels like we know exactly where he's going. Like I don't really see him going anywhere else from picks 32 to 40. And if he gets picked like 36 overall, like I just don't see him dropping here. It feels like we already know where he's going and he's going at value based on what we know, which is kind of weird to me. So I think like him in the 10th round is kind of crazy value. If Kirk Cousins had fell to you at 7-10, would you have preferred him to JJ?
I probably would have went Kirk for the sure thing, and then I would have took whoever fell still probably between Levis and McCarthy just to have as the future QB2 or QB3.
Yeah, that would have been probably an ideal strategy there, I think.
Yeah, I just didn't get the vet to fall, so it's fine. And you mentioned too, like maybe it could have been better with like a Stafford or a Rodgers. But I played like a gambling game there, and it looked like neither of them would have came back to me anyways, even if I was going to plan to go for them at the 9th round.
Yeah, it's weird though, because like Evans and Stafford both ended up on my team, and those are types of dudes I almost never, ever walk away from startup drafts with. And I guess, it's the reason these are mock drafts, because you get to kind of fuck around a little bit and do some stuff that you wouldn't typically do, and you build your teams differently each time. But I would say that would be like the 2 biggest things that I wouldn't normally do is if I'm on the clock with like a Stafford sitting there, I might even go with a Penix instead of a Stafford, just because I have a pretty strong stance on taking dudes who are clearly on the back end of their career. Like you have the chance to take anyone at any point in their career, and you're choosing actively to take them at the end of it, feels a little bit like a weird strategy to me. So that's one other thing that I would probably give to people out there, a piece of advice that you shouldn't do that I did.
Fair enough. I think to myself too, just looking at the strategy that I took, I told you that my favorite one so far this offseason that I've had success with is that hero RB. And it just feels like right here with where I went James Cook, McCarthy, Levis, Harris, like there was so much wide receiver talent that I just missed out on because I went with it all early, and not necessarily bad, but I do like those teams better that get that early running back and then can kind of take advantage of all the value in that wide receiver in those middle rounds.
Yeah, for sure. I probably could have waited also, maybe taken JT there and where Tua was, and felt a lot better about my receiving core, and then maybe went with like a Baker or a Kirk down there where I had Adonai. But listen, you live and you learn. That's why you do these mock drafts before you get into real ones.
Agreed. Yeah, I think I would have felt better if I, instead of Jamar Chase, I go maybe A Rich or Caleb Williams, and then I don't have to take those 2 quarterbacks middle rounds. I can take that those other players. So
Yeah.
anyways, that's where we're at. I see we got a couple people in here that are giving us good news. They said 1.5K. Oh, let me switch this thing. Where are we at? There we go. But yeah, we had a goal. I pinned it in the things we wanted to hit, or in the chat. We wanted to hit 1.5K before the NFL draft. We smashed that goal. So thank you
Dubs
to
in the
everybody
shot.
who's been subscribed. W's in the chat. That's what we like to see. Got rocket ships, all that stuff. So I appreciate each and every one of you guys that are saying congratulations. Look, man, the goal doesn't stop here. 1.5K is just a tiny little stepping stone to where we want to be. We're on the road to whatever we want. It's really all within our hands. We can go out and get whatever we want. So we're taking this to 10K, 20K, 30K, 100K. That's where we're going. So appreciate each and every one of you on for the ride. We got Anita Max Win in the chat, but hey, also one more thing before we get out of here, guys. We are doing a draft stream on the BDG Dynasty channel. So if you like the live streams like this, you like the interaction that we can have with you guys, we're doing that for the NFL draft. Nick, we're doing some stuff too, where we're maybe going to be doing some giveaways and things.
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing some giveaways. We're putting together a wheel that consists of a whole lot of shit. Some physical giveaways, some like team review giveaways. Some we might have some people call in, on the spot if we land on that spot on the wheel. We're thinking of different creative ideas. So if you think of anything that you'd like to see us do or give, or literally anything, like, there are no creative bounds when it comes to what we want to do on the stream. But yeah, me, Andrew, and Adam will be here in the studio, a couple rooms over, live streaming for the entirety of the first round of the NFL draft. So I hope y'all will join us there. It'll be super fun.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super excited for it. We'll see. Bindle says pie in the face. It'll be a pie in the face if the Vikings take Bo Nix or Michael Penix. I'm gonna be pretty pissed off, but
I like that. I'm
Nick's
putting that on the wheel right now, honestly.
Nick's wishing that on me right now. He wants them to take Bo Nix just for the memes. But if you guys like this content, guys, hit the like button on the way out. I see we got lots of people in here. Hit the like button. It's the best free way to support this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you go join the Discord. There is a free Discord linked in the description for the League FFB. Also, make sure you're a member of the BDGE Discord. But both Discords are direct access to us, helping you guys with your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams. But with all of that being said, guys, we will see you on the next episode. And until then, peace out.